upcoming events, the next event is in March. March the 10th is Hushamadian, Vahitashtian. We have several other events coming in April and in May. I have already put out the flyers with the dates, so if you're interested and if you'd like to be on our email list, please do so, so we can keep you posted. I have to say that Missak always puts me on my toes every year. He always calls me, he says, I have something that I've discovered I want to share. I met Missak in 2005. I didn't know who he was, but I had heard about him actually in 2003. It took me 2 years to find him, and I found him. And now he's become a great friend and a great supporter, he and his wife. And he's helped me in many ways, especially with our conference in 2014 with the Near East Relief. I call him the honorary Sherlock Holmes because he always delves into the past and brings it to the light so that the new generation will know what has happened. His passion is history and always digging into the past, even though his profession is an electrical engineer. He's done a lot of great work, especially finding out with the Arturo Orphanage, with the Hazir Orphanage, bringing it to the limelight, with helping with Barek with the movie Orphans of the Genocide, and amongst other things, as well as humanitarian work that he's been doing for the last few years through his employer, Mike Sarian, going to Armenia and Artsakh and helping the Armenian soldiers there. So our heart goes to you, Missak. Thank you for the great work you do. So for today's subject, it's something very new for me, Pilgrims of the Sinai Desert and Islamic Covenants to Armenians. Thank you, Missak.
Hi there. Pilgrims of the Sinai Desert and the Islamic Covenants to the Armenians is the story of our ancestors vested by their Christian faith, made not only dangerous pilgrimage travels to Jerusalem, but further south all the way to Mount Sinai to the Sinai Desert, which is one of the most unforgiving habitat on the planet. But on their way, they carved on rocks characters that were newly invented by Mesrop Mashtots. It is fascinating to see the oldest surviving Armenian writings that exist outside Armenia. The scope of my presentation is short brief of pieces of Armenian-related history, while acknowledging that each piece deserved a complete presentation by itself. But I had to dissect it into small pieces, beginning by the Prophet Muhammad around 625 AD, all the way to the 20th century. Numerous Islamic caliphs, leaders, sultans have issued covenants to the Armenians, dictating security and peaceful coexistence. A covenant is a treaty, and a decree is an official order issued by legal authority. Decrees, known as firmans in the Near East countries, are formal binding agreements among Christians and Muslims. Since we're going to be going back and forward, I figured that I should give you a little bit of geography so that as I repeat the names, you will make the better connection. Obviously, let me put the pointer on here. Okay, Armenia, East Armenia, West Armenia, I just selected Malatya because there's a connection there. And then all the way south through Syria, Lebanon, and we get here to Jerusalem, Petra in Jordan, and the Sinai Desert all the way to the south is where will be our kind of destination. Geographical places for your understanding, as they will be repeated frequently, as I said. From early times, the present-day prayer and spiritual devotion have existed in Jerusalem and at Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai, or Jebel Musa, as it's known by the Bedouins, the Arab Bedouins of Sinai, is one of the world's holiest summits. This is where Jews, Christians, and Muslims believe God spoke with Moses, giving him the divine laws. Pilgrims have been visiting Mount Sinai for over 1,500 years, and its popularity and importance is secondary only to Jerusalem. The origins of the Armenian community in Jerusalem are traced to the 4th century AD, and the accounts of their pilgrimages are numerous. Okay. Jerusalem in English, Al-Quds in Arabic, Yerushalayim in Hebrew, Jerusalem in Armenian, has for decades been a flashpoint for global tensions as the nexus of three of the world's oldest religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Armenian pilgrims have always been attracted to Jerusalem. In fact, there is no history of Christian Jerusalem without the Armenian presence. The Armenian corridor, which is in the color blue, covers roughly 30 acres, about 1/6 of the area inside the old city wall. The prominence of Armenians is manifested by the fact that their quarter is one of the 4 principal sections into which the old city is now divided. The others are Christian in red, Muslim in green, and Jewish quarters as in purple. It is amazing that such a small country, Armenians, now a population of 10 million, we have a quarter of ourselves. According to Dr. Abraham Terian, for Armenians, going on pilgrimage to Holy Land is hardly a novel tradition. From the first recorded Armenian pilgrimage to Jerusalem in the 4th century to the early 20th century, when Catholicos Cherimian Nairi penned his invitation to the Promised Land, Armenians have felt a profound devotion to the cradle of their spirituality. This is an 1890 picture, Pilgrims in Jerusalem. Sources show the kind of hardship our ancestors faced even early in this century to fulfill their lifelong dreams, to see the Holy Land. No wonder one of the 2 Armenian words for pilgrim is mahdesi, used exclusively for pilgrims to Holy Land. It means literally one who has seen death, maha desnem. That is, on the hazardous journey. The other Armenian word for pilgrim is uchtavor, literally one who has made a vow, that is, to see the Holy Land or any sacred places. The first recorded Armenian pilgrimage to the Holy Land is that of an Armenian delegation of priests attending dedication of the Constantinian edifices over the city of the tomb of Christ, early in the 4th century. The visit is alluded in a Greek letter sent by Patriarch Macarius of Jerusalem to his contemporary Saint Vertanes, the son of our Krikor Lusavoric, the illuminator. The accounts of Armenian pilgrimages to the Holy Land are too numerous to explore every route taken by every group over many centuries. Suffice it to say that even during the most difficult times, such as the destruction of nearly all the churches in the Holy Land by the Persians in 614, and the ensuing spread of Islam, Armenians continued their extensive pilgrimages to the Holy Land. Early in the 5th 5th century, Saint Eutymius, who lived from 377 to 473, the Armenian bishop of Melidine or Malatya in Lesser Armenia, moved to Jerusalem. By 426, he became one of the founders of monasticism in the Holy Land. Among his many disciples was Saint Sabas or Mar Saba, who formed another such community not far away in the Judean desert. According to the life of Saint Eutymius, a group of 400 Armenian pilgrims from Malatya visited Eutymius on their way to the Jordan River. The Armenians' extraordinary fascination with the Holy Land reflects the Armenian Christian identity. Professor Stone added, "This is why the Armenians have their own quarter in Jerusalem. A direct result of the many pilgrims passing through the holy city." A 7th century author notes that in his time, there were over 70 Armenian churches and monasteries in and around Jerusalem. That's a huge number. And the Marsava, that the greatest of the ancient monasteries dotting the wilderness of the Judean desert, Marsava, hangs dramatically down the cliff edge of a deep ravine. The complex was established in the 5th century by Saint Sabas, or Marsaba in Arabic, a monk from central Turkey, disciple of Saint Eutymius, the Armenian bishop from Malatya. Marsaba in Arabic was largely rebuilt after the major earthquake in 1834. A lavra or a laura is a type of monastery consisting of a cluster of cells or caves for hermits with a church and sometimes a refectory at the center. The life of Saint Saba states that Armenian monks were permitted to serve the canonical hours at Saint Saba's monastery in the past. How did it all this start? This subject, today's subject, at Ararat Eskijan here, following presentation, Odyssey of Armenian Doctors, Dentists, and Pharmacists during the Armenian Genocide, the book is outside at the entrance, in May 2018, I had a very hot discussion with Dr. Garbis Harboyan about Prophet Muhammad's covenant to the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem. Initially, he thought that the covenant was published in the Saint Lazare Kehuni, the illustrated magazine that he acquired lately. We agreed to meet in June, because he was here in May, and in June I had to go to Canada. We agreed to meet there personally, because I had to take photos and pictures to see what it was. June 18, 2018, Dr. Harboyan of Montreal, Canada, published in an Armenian newspaper, Astak, in Beirut, Lebanon, the details of the communication between Prophet Muhammad and then Armenian Patriarch of Jerusalem and their successors. September 11, 2018, Harut Sasunyan, who's here among us, published in the California Courier in English, Prophet Muhammad's rarely known decree to the Armenian Patriarch of Jerusalem. A fascinating article that should be read for more details. I have picked some sections for the lack of time. Basically, in 626 AD, the Armenian Patriarch Abraham of Jerusalem went to the holy city of Mecca with a delegation of 40 prominent Armenians to meet the Prophet Muhammad to secure his protection. At the end of the meeting, Prophet Muhammad issued a decree which stated, "I, Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, prophet and servant of God, I pay my respect to Patriarch Abraham. I honor him and all the bishops and priests in Jerusalem, Damascus, the Arab regions. I recognize and guarantee their monasteries, churches, properties, and lands. I, Prophet Muhammad, with the witness of God and the 30 people around me, I grant my patronage and protection and I dispense my mercy to the Armenian churches, wherever they may be. That's very important. Wherever the churches they may be. I declare all this in my name as the prophet, in the name of my Muslim faithfuls. When I met Dr. Harboyan in Montreal, he confirmed that that decree was published in this book here, which was printed in 1979. But the document which said it was Muhammad's decree, as you see here, it was printed in reverse. This is Arabic, but in reverse. This could not be read. You had to put a mirror in order to read it. Was published in reverse and could not be read properly. Thus, the Prophet's decree became the first official document confirming the status of Armenian Patriarchate in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, the original decree cannot be located in the Patriarchate's archive. However, a yellowish copy exists in the Patriarchate's Mardigian Museum. Taking my magnifier, as you see here, when I read the section, obviously I electronically reversed it so I can read it properly. I read the section of the Firman attributed to Prophet Muhammad, which is published in the Armenian Art Treasure of the Jerusalem, the book that I just showed you. I can see that this is not possible because I could clearly read Salah ad-Din on the Firman. You see it in the red boxes on the picture. Who conquered Jerusalem over 560 years later. Then the covenant given by Muhammad after 560 years later, which is quoted as 626. We should be driven by facts and not emotions. The Caliphate, or Khalifa, was led by a ruler called Khalif, which means successor. The Khalif was considered the successor to Prophet Muhammad and was both the religious and political leader of the Muslim world. The Caliphate became after the death of Prophet Muhammad at 632 AD. First Khalif was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, who passed away in 634. Who through his daughter, Aisha, was the father-in-law of Prophet Muhammad. Present at the initial Armenian meeting with Prophet Muhammad was the second Khalif, Umar bin al-Khattab, who became one of the Prophet's successors and issued a similar decree confirming the Prophet's decree himself. Umar then issued his own decree and confirmed the Prophet's initial decree. He was a senior companion of the Prophet Muhammad, Excuse me. Umar was an expert Muslim jurist known for his pious and just nature, which earned him the epithet Al-Faruq. You see here, this is his logo. Al-Faruq is written here, which means the one who distinguishes between right and wrong. Umar was succeeded by Khalif Ali, who also issued a decree for Armenians in Jerusalem, confirming the previous decrees by Prophet Muhammad and Umar. Ali was the first male who accepted Islam. Ali protected Muhammad from an early age and took part in almost all battles fought by the Muslims. After migrating to Medina, he married Muhammad's daughter, Fatima. Here is an image decree of the Armenian. Just for your knowledge, for the Shia, Ali is considered as the Imam. Scrolls, as you see in the picture in the middle, are made to be opened like this, so you can see and read them. Thanks to his beatitude, Archbishop Nuram Manukian, Patriarch of Jerusalem, I have better copies now, and my research is still in progress. As long, because these shamans that you see, they are 15, 20 feet long. So in order to read them, you really need to focus and see what's going on. And you will see, look at the firman, how long it is. That's the first one. And that's the second one. So you can see how hard it is to read and translate what is going on. This is the section shows Prophet Muhammad decree with some of the witnesses as Abu Bakr Siddiq, Umar bin Khattab, Osman bin Affan, Ali bin Abi Talib, and Muawiyah bin Sufyan. These are important, one of the most important figures in the Islamic faith, which witnessed the signing of that decree. Lowermost, magnified part, specifically mentions Prophet Muhammad covenant to the Armenian Christian sect. I can see here Rasulullah li ahl al-millah al-masihiyya ta'ifat al-Arman. Basically saying Prophet Muhammad specifically mentioning the Armenians. In 1187, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, who is a Kurdish, and his family originated from Tavin in Armenia, occupied Jerusalem from the Second Crusade and expelled the majority of 100,000 Christians from the city. He took over all the Latin churches in Jerusalem and forbade church services. However, he granted Armenians partial freedom. Armenian Patriarch Abraham, with a group of his clergy, met Salah ad-Din and showed him Prophet's decree. Consequently, Salah ad-Din issued his own covenant, authenticating all previous decrees issued by Prophet Muhammad, Khalif Umar and Ali. In his decree, Salah ad-Din specifically noted the jurisdiction of Armenian over churches, holy places, Agog Convent, Church of Bethlehem, and Nablus, the Holy Tomb, and specifically freedom to worship. He also lowered the taxes on Armenian merchants and pilgrims, which are mentioned in this decree. Later on, many Ottoman sultans, in 1517, Sultan Salim occupied Jerusalem and issued his decree. Sultan Salim's successor, Suleiman, these are Ottoman sultans, right? Confirming all these decrees all the way from Muhammad to that date. Subsequent sultans also issued decrees such as Muhammad IV, 1659, Sultan Muhammad I, and so forth. Ottomans recertified Prophet Muhammad's decree in 1539, where Armenians are specifically mentioned here. And the last Islamic decree was in 1917 by Ali al-Hussein bin Ali, the Sharif of Mecca. While Turks had declared the jihad against Armenians, Sharif Hussein bin Ali, the highest spiritual authority of Islam, direct descendant of Prophet Muhammad and guardian of his holy city Mecca, issued this decree making Armenians a protected people of Islam. The call for the protection from Turkish atrocities was only a reflection of the true values of Islam and its relationship with their Christian neighbors. Now we are in Jerusalem. In 1894, during home construction, a mosaic floor was found near Damascus Gate in Jerusalem, and the Masrara Quarter has been named the Bird Mosaic. Soon after the discovery, a room has been built on top of it to guard the mosaic from the elements of nature. The plot is property of the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem. Above is an inscription in Armenian reading, "For the memory and redemption of all the Armenians whose name only God knows," meaning in memory of Armenian soldiers who served at that time in the Byzantine army. According to Dr. Michael Stone, we never knew they were Armenians on the Mount of Olives, but a tombstone containing an Armenian inscription was found under the Russian monastery there, proving that Armenian had settled near the place where Christ ascended into heaven on the 40th day of his resurrection. It has been dated between 5th and 6th century, based on the style and the iconography. Jerusalem's 1400-year-old Armenian peacock. The famous mosaic of the 5 breads and the 2 fish in the Church of Multiplication in Tabala. Partridge, fish, grape mosaic in Jerusalem. The inscription mentions a certain Jacob, Armenian bishop of Matzpin, maybe Hagop Metzi. I'm just going after the characters now, because I'm going to take you all the way to Sinai, and I need to show you how this history was built up on the actual Armenian characters. Mesrop Mashtots invented the Armenian alphabet in 405 AD, greatly increasing levels of literacy in the country, permitted ordinary people to read the Bible for the first time, and spread Christianity in Armenia. The oldest Armenian inscriptions were written before the middle of the 5th century. That is within 20 to 30 years of St. Mesrop Mashtot's invention of the Armenian alphabet. This is in Nazareth, northern part of Jerusalem. Before this find, the oldest known writing in Armenian language was the Church of St. Sarkis in Tekor, also known as the Tekor Basilica. It was a 5th century Armenian church built in historic Armenia, currently in the Kars province of Turkey, about 10 miles away from current Armenian border. It was severely damaged by earthquake in 1912 and 1936, and later damaged by vandalism. The stones of the church have been taken and built the city, buildings. And currently in rubble. The inscription dating the building was in 480s. Was the oldest known writing in the Armenian language. The Tekor Basilica, from oldest Armenian inscription to total destruction. That's how it is, how it looks, it currently looks now. The oldest dated Armenian manuscript in the Gospel is the Gospel of Queen Milky, dated 862 AD, preserved in Venice at the Mechitarist Monastery. Fragments of older manuscript exist, often preserved as single pages, but none of them bears a date. That is why this is the oldest known manuscript. We're going to go to the Sinai Desert now. Deserts are some of the most unforgiving habitats on the planet. They are barren wastelands where only the hardiest of creatures can have a hope of surviving. They are harsh and cruel, exceptionally hot during the day and very cold during the night. During colder periods of the year, temperatures can plummet below freezing come nighttime. Distances are another dilemma. In the desert, they are dangerously deceptive. Objects in the distance seem very close that you can touch them, while in reality they are far enough. You could probably perish before reaching them. Wadi Muqattab, its Valley of Inscriptions. Professor Michael Stone of Hebrew University of Jerusalem was drawn to establish the rock inscription graffiti project of Armenian graffiti in the Sinai Desert, as you see where they are. which happened in the last year before the Sinai Peninsula was reverted back to the Egyptian sovereignty. These inscriptions, only containing the pilgrim's name and sometimes an Armenian cross, or the appeal of the divine's mercy and protection, had been scratched on prominent rocks in the Sinai desert. There are Greek, Georgian, Armenian, Talmudic, Latin, Arabic, and most of all, Nabatean. This is Nabatean, what you're looking at. And people will wonder, what is Nabatean? And I will show in a second. But imagine our ancestors as pilgrims walked around there and wrote down their memories and asking for mercy. Petra, one of the 7 wonders of the world, is a 10,000-year-old city hidden in the desert. It was the capital of Nabatean Empire, an ancient Arab state that grew rich due to its control of the spice roads. Petra in Jordan, unknown to much of the world before 1989. That year, the city carved rose red sandstones, as you can see here in the middle, were featured in the blockbuster film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. For most people, graffiti scrawled on doors, walls, park benches, and newly poured cement sidewalks represent nothing but an eyesore. But for Dr. Michael Stone, professor of Armenian Studies in Hebrew University, graffiti inscribed by the Armenians into rocks and cliffs, in and out and around Holy Land, revealed a chapter in Armenian history that was previously unknown. Knowledge of the history of Armenians in the land of Israel before Crusader period is sparse, even more so of Armenian pilgrimage to Mount Sinai. Only one report has survived, attributed that in the mid-7th century, Greek monk called Anastasius of Sinai, and he says, I quote, "It is their custom," he says, of Armenians, "to come regularly to the holy Mount Sinai. A large group of them arrived, about 600 souls, and pilgrims generally traveled on donkeys with Arab guides and approached Mount Sinai either from the west or the east coast. Imagine 600 Armenian pilgrims riding donkeys, camels, with their mounted Bedouin guides, as well as additional beasts carrying baggage, food, and most of all, water." A remarkable publication by Professor Michael Stone. More than 40 years ago, documents some 155 Armenian inscriptions from 7 major sites, different sites far away from each other, scattered along ancient pilgrimage routes in Sinai, left by Armenian pilgrims on their way to St. Catherine Monastery and Mount Sinai, where, according to the Bible, Moses encountered God and received the 10 Commandments. Dr. Stone says, "I saw immediately that some of the inscriptions were indeed in Armenian, and they seemed to be old. I was thunderstruck, even more by their antiquity than by their existence. Clearly, pilgrims had left their inscriptions." Wadi Hajjaj is well above sea level, and St. Catherine's Monastery and the area around it are even higher. How does he differentiate? How does he know how old are these little inscriptions? Paleography is a distinct science used for dating historical manuscripts. The Armenian paleography engages in the research and study of Armenian written heritage that originates from the 5th century, Mashto's alphabet. Paleography includes the examination of letters, types, and their evolution since their date. For example, here, let's take the letter Shah, the Sh. This was in 1862, how it's written. This is in 902. This is in 1044. This is in 1077. When they compile it together, they can come up with a science to tell when this text was written. The Armenian paleography is directly connected to the manuscript lithography and printed literature in regards to the study of used letters. Examples in vertical. The first writing here is from the Tekor, 5th century. Second one is Saint-Hrisime, 618. Bhagavan, 623. Svartnot, 641. And so forth, to tell you how they can differentiate what year it has been written. Another group of inscriptions in the Sinai Desert. Dr. Stone said, I scrambled over the wall and started to study the rock more closely. I immediately distinguished an Armenian inscription. It was the name Natan. And as I looked at it, shivers ran down my spine. It was old. So my instinct and everything I knew about Armenian writing as a professor told me, and not just old, but very, very old, going back to the 1st century of Armenian writing in 405 AD. Natan, as you can see it written here. Ancient multilingual inscriptions on the rocks. Dr. Stone, this large rock has the most inscription of any in the Wadi. One of these inscriptions really brought things to a satisfactory climax. It read, I have gone around Moses. That is, a pilgrim wrote it triumphantly on his way back from his visit to Mount Sinai. We had deciphered their names in many tongues: Greek, Latin, Armenian, Georgian, Assyrian, Syriac, Ethiopic, English, Bulgarian. Dr. Stone was able to decipher 2 Ananias written, one in Nazareth, up north, about 400 miles away, and another one in the Sinai Desert, written by the same person. All Unicode script were not able, the date cannot be determined precisely, but in Nazareth, an archaeological context of Nazareth, which is written as Arm 1, you can see here, N is for Nazareth, Armenian 1, and H is in Wadi Hajjaj, Armenian. So this Anania and that Anania got, that it was from the 5th century, probably when Mesrop Mashtots was still alive. More Armenian writing chiseled on the rock. The Sinai Peninsula is scorching hot in the summer, cold in the winter, and always a parched land, a desolate place, a true desert. The pilgrims embarked on their travels from their mountainous terrain in western Armenia, traveling on the backs of camels and donkeys to kiss the sacred ground of Jerusalem, where their Messiah Jesus lived and died, and then trekked south. This is Jerusalem, so they trekked south, either on the eastern side, passing through Elat, going to the Moses mountain here, or from Jerusalem, trekking to the Mediterranean coast, and then coming from the west coast, going down. It's probably going on the Mediterranean was safer, as in the middle of the desert coming down. The road to St. Catherine's Monastery. The Orthodox Church, St. Catherine Monastery. Christians have been coming to this remote, harsh and isolate place since at least the 2nd century AD. To practice the monastic life, it became a place of Christian pilgrimage in the 4th century, and the church was first built to enclose the burning bush on the orders of St. Helen, the mother of Constantine the Great. One of the oldest continually functioning Christian monasteries in the world. The fortress was built later on, as we see today, was built by the Roman Emperor Justinian I between the years 548 and 565. St. Catherine's Monastery is about an hour's drive from Wadi Hajjaj, where those inscriptions were, with its remarkable rock drawings. The area as a whole is quite mountainous, and the mountains are high, granite, and very imposing. Today, there are over 3,300 manuscripts at St. Catherine's in 12 different languages, comprising one of the largest manuscript libraries in the world. They date from the 5th century on down, and this field constitutes one of the most significant collections of original research documents known to exist in the world. The monastery is here. Mount Sinai is here. St. Catherine Mountain, the highest peak, is there. This is where Moses received the 10 Commandments. Moses was tending the flock. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am, Lord." "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." And this is the burning bush enclosed within the St. Catherine's Monastery. Entrance to the monastery is through that little small door. You see how high they built so that attackers cannot get in. Egypt's ancient Sinai library reopened in December 2017, an ancient library which holds thousands of centuries old religious and historical manuscripts at the famed St. Catherine Monastery, UNESCO World Heritage Site in south of Sinai. The renovated shelves and the upper level hold the monastery's collection of early Greek printed books. These will protect some 2,000 manuscripts and about 200 significant printed books. The monastery library preserved the second largest collection of early codices and manuscripts in the world and is outnumbered only by the Vatican Library in Rome. The Codex Sinaiticus, one of the oldest and most complex texts of Bible, dating from the early 4th century, was taken from the monastery in the 19th century and is today housed in the British Library in London. But part of the St. Catherine's collection is the Armenian Aristotle's Categoria. Unfortunately, I have a black and white picture. I'm sure this is all color, and it will be beautiful Aristotle's book. This document, again, origin St. Catherine's, but currently from Schoyen collection in Oslo, Norway. This is a sample of palimpsests, which is a manuscript on which the original writing has been effaced to make room for a later writing because of lack of paper or papyrus, but of which the original traces remain. New technology allows us to find what was written under it, and the zoomed version right here. You see Armenian text on the background. This manuscript was identified by Mircea Achinian as the most important and oldest manuscript from the golden age of Armenian literature in the 6th century. The above text, which is in Assyrian or Syriac, is the oldest evidence of Melkite liturgy in Syriac. ancient icons displayed at the St. Catherine's Monastery. In the 5th century, Roman Emperor Justinian I sent a group of men from north part of what is known today as Romania. So these folks came to St. Catherine to build a church and a defensive wall, those walls that we saw. The platoon from Romania, somewhere between 20 and 40 men in total, were ordered to remain there after the wall was finished and protect the holy site from the barbarian tribes. Today, the descendants of those men who came from Romania constitute the Jabalia tribe and continue to protect the monastery today, despite having converted to Islam in the 6th century. Peaceful harmony, Islamic tribe, folks preparing bread for St. Catherine's. Here you see the bread below on the bottom. On St. Catherine's Day. Peaceful harmony, Islamic tribe preparing bread in St. Catherine's Day. This was last year, St. Catherine's Day celebration in the monastery. It was through the wilderness of the Sinai Peninsula that the ancient Israelite people wandered for 40 years, being led by Moses out of Egypt to the Promised Land, as described in the book of Exodus. It was here, on Mount Sinai, that Moses received the Ten Commandments. The covenant between God and the people of ancient Israel was established at Mount Sinai, and that place is therefore sacred to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This is at the monastery, April 2018. And this is on Good Friday, 2018. The Feast of St. Catherine is on December 18, 2018. The marble shrine over the relics of St. Catherine is decorated for the feast. It is believed that St. Catherine's remains were carried by angels to Mount Caterina and deposited on the highest peak in all of Sinai. A 7th century author mentions a particular pilgrimage of 800 Armenians to Mount Sinai. This is fascinating, 800. Such a group would have required over 1,500 beasts of burden. And I've selected this picture because there are 15 camels here. So there had to be 100 of these, 100 to make 1,500 beasts of burden to carry water and provisions to sustain them as such an arduous trek through the desert. An extraordinary and costly undertaking. It wasn't cheap to travel at that time. On the St. Catherine's door, here we go again, 3 Armenian names. Gaspar, remember Gaspar. Sedat and Sahar. These are the actual writings in the box that you see. In order to give you an idea, around St. Catherine's Monastery is a short video. You see how the walls are high, and look at the mountains that they have to climb around it to go to Mount Moses. This is the road that they go up. Some of them go on camel because it's hard to come. It's about 7,500 feet. They start at night, walking up the summit. And this is a chapel on the top of the summit at 7,500 feet. to give you how rugged the area is. And this is Mount Sinai's shadow as the sun came up. This is the view from the top. These are some pilgrims who have gone up there, and it must be winter time because there's even snow in the middle of the desert. The burning bush inside the monastery. A tired Jabaliya tribe, Muslim person, and see how far it is from the Mount Sinai. That's the monastery down there, and they're zooming up all the way up. Sunrise on Mount Moses, and kind of sunset. That's the Holy Trinity Church up there. There are thousands of pilgrims that go, but this one had the best view for the surrounding, and that's why I chose that. But usually there are thousands of pilgrims going up every night. Spend the early hours so that they can see sunrise up there. But another interesting Armenian related thing is up near the Holy Trinity Church, the chapel up there. This is how it looks inside. This is the chapel taken from a plane, and there is a mosque up there on top as well. This is the mosque, and this is how it looks inside on Mount Sinai. But Professor Stone discovered Armenian inscription on the peak of the Jebel Musa, near the mosque. These, where you see these numbers, are Armenian written characters there. Right? Somewhere around here. An inscription dated from the year 1463. Research showed that its authors were a group of 4 clerics who had belonged to the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem, 2 of whom subsequently became patriarchs later on. This inscription is different from all the other inscriptions that were found in Mount Sinai or elsewhere in Sinai Peninsula. It is dated, easily read, and we can identify persons involved. 4 known persons: Davil, Mardiros, Donagan, Astvazadur. Bishop Davil became patriarch from 1485 to 1491, and Bishop Mardiros became patriarch between 1491 and 1501. You see here Sion, which is the official publication of the Patriarchate in Jerusalem. In 1966, they printed an article, and this is a black and white picture, but this is is the real rock and the inscription on top. More inscriptions at the peak on Sinai. Derastaz, Hishia Toros in English. Lord, remember Toros. Beautiful views from the top. Descending the summit back to the St. Catherine's Monastery. Not only the monastery is the oldest, one of the oldest operating churches in the world, it is also the only Christian monastery in the world that contains a mosque on its grounds. You see the bell towers of the church here and the mosque next to it, or another angle where the mosque is here next to the church bell tower. St. Catherine's Monastery has on display another covenant of Prophet Muhammad with the monks of Mount Sinai, a decree granted to the monastery in 628 AD by Prophet Muhammad himself, promising the monks his protection and the freedom to practice their Christian faith. Islamic scholar Dr. John Andrew Morrow, who has written multi-books about the covenants of Prophet Muhammad, stand with copies of the covenant of Prophet Muhammad with the monks of Sinai, all issued and authenticated by Ottoman sultans. He has also 6 other covenants given to 6 different churches, Christian churches around the world. The covenant of Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, with the monks of Mount Sinai, also known as the Ashtiname of Muhammad. Ashtiname is a Persian word meaning book of peace, a Persian term for a treaty and a covenant. It was independently verified on a regular basis by the 5 schools of Islamic theory of law. It includes in black the hand of the Prophet Muhammad on the left, as you can see in the picture, and you can see it in the back displayed. When he conquered Egypt, Turkish Sultan Selim I took hold of the original covenant document and had a copy delivered that he signed and added his golden seal and added the following words, "And Turkey, listen. This covenant to which the Prophet had placed his seal has been deposited in the treasury of the Sultan. It is written on a piece of leather from Taif, blessed be he who abides by these dictates." The golden seal of Sultan Selim I, who had the covenant authenticated by the greatest scholars throughout the Ottoman Empire in 1517. The Ottomans, who brought the original covenant to the royal treasury for safekeeping in 1517. So he took the original to the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, which has served as the source and copied have ever been since endorsed its authenticity every few years, all the way from 1519 to 1818. I'm almost done. Just a few more minutes. This is the most important part. This is a letter which was issued by Muhammad himself, Ibn Abdullah, the messenger, the prophet. This letter is directed to the embraces of Islam as a covenant given to the followers of Jesus the Nazarene in the east and west, in far and near, the Arabs and foreigners, the known and the unknown words. This letter contains the oath given unto them, and he who disobeys that which is therein will be considered a disbeliever and a transgressor to that whereunto he is commanded. He will be regarded as one who has corrupted the oath of God, disbelieved his testament, rejected his authority, despised his religion and made himself deserving of his curse, whether he is a sultan or any other believer of Islam. So from the highest, the pious person to the highest sultan, as in Islam, this is directed to them by Prophet Muhammad himself. Whenever Christian monks, devotees, and pilgrims gather together, whether in a mountain or a valley or a den or a frequented palace or plain or church or in houses of worship, verily we are at the back of them and shall protect them and their properties and their morals. By myself, my friends, and my assistants, for they are my subjects and under my protection. He says, their judges, he's talking about Jewish and Christian judges, should not be changed or prevented from accomplishing their offices, nor the monks disturbed in exercising their religious order, or the people of seclusion by stop from dwelling in their cells. And the most important one, and Turkey should listen very well this one, no one is allowed to plunder these Christians or destroy or spoil any of their churches or houses of worship or take any of the things contained within these houses and bring them to houses of Islam or into mosques. Don't take their stones and bring them into mosques and build mosques or houses. And he who takes away anything therefrom will be one who has corrupted the oath of God and in truth disobeyed his messenger. Do not dispute or argue with them. He's talking to the Christians and Jews, or people of the book, as they say. But deal according to the verse recorded in the Quran, which says, do not dispute or argue with the people of the book, but in which is the best. Verse 29:46, and I'll read it in a minute. And last, and this is in the covenant again, should any Christian woman be married to a Muslim, such marriage must not take place except after her consent. And she must not be prevented later on from going to her church for prayer. Their churches must be honored, and they must not be withheld from building churches or even repairing convents. And this is the verse from the Quran, 29:46. وَلَا تُجَادِلُوا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْهُمْ وَقُولُوا إِنَّ بِالَّذِي أَنزَلَ إِلَيْنَا وَأَنزَلَ إِلَيْكُمْ وَإِلَهُنَا وَإِلَهُكُمْ وَاحِدٌ وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ. And do not argue with the people of the scripture or people of the book in a way that is best, except for those who commit injustice among them, and say, we believe in that which has been revealed to us and revealed to you, and your Allah and our Allah is one, and we are Muslim in submission to Him. The relics, the covenant, are housed in the former private chambers of the sultans. It's the sultan's treasury. Islamic sacred relics displayed at Topkapi Palace in Istanbul include relics of Prophet Muhammad, consisting of religious pieces sent to the Ottoman sultans between the 16th century and the 19th century. The covenant of Prophet Muhammad with the monks of Mount Sinai is also displayed in Topkapi Palace Museum today. The museum also has the holy mantle, sacred seal of Muhammad, the beard of Muhammad, the tooth, and blessed sandals, the bowl that he ate from, and other Islamic relics. The one that you see on the left, it's the Armenian covenant in the Patriarchate of Jerusalem on the left. And the one on the right is the one in Sinai. About 350 miles away from each other. But it's funny, when I read the text, it is written in the same covenants, both of them. It says, no one is allowed to plunder these Christians or destroy or spoil any of their churches or houses of worship, or take any of the things contained within these houses and bring it to the houses of Islam. And he who takes away anything therefrom will be one who has corrupted the oath of God and in truth disobeyed his messenger, Prophet Muhammad. As I said, Turkey should listen to this pretty good. This is a typical house in Turkey, in the Van Shadah region. Look at this one in Van. It's a typical house. But when I magnify the area here, you will see that it has crosses here. And in the next picture, when I zoom even more, I can even read Hovannes, or part of it that is written there. So this is just another house, or a mosque, or a city dwelling that they have, they pulled the church Hajj cars. This is another one. Look at it on the right. It's just part of the house. And when you zoom to it, it's a Hajj car, used a wall building material, which Muhammad himself in 625 forbid. He had the vision at that time to know that something is going to happen later on. And he who takes away anything therefrom will be one who has corrupted the oath of God and in truth disobeyed his messenger, Prophet Muhammad. And thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Missak, for a very informative afternoon. Any questions?
Did you go to St. Catherine yourself?
I was going to go last year. I was trying to book a place, and I heard on the news that Islamic militants killed about 4 people very near to St. Catherine's, and then the project to go to Armenia came up, so I went to Armenia. I haven't been there.
Also, these pictures are from?
These are available on YouTube from pilgrims that have visited there, and they posted their videos on YouTube.
Okay, that's good. Missak.
Yes, sir.
Are there any Jewish artifacts of Mount Sinai? Maybe Jewish religion, so Christians and Muslims?
It's a Greek Orthodox church, monastery, so there are writings up there, yes. But because we are related, we will focus on the Armenian part of things. I just talked about that, but there are a lot of, in the libraries and a lot of engraving and stuff there up on the mountain, yes. Yes?
Perhaps this is a very naive question, but I wonder if these decrees are brought up to Turkey's people or the government.
Yeah, first of all, you gotta know about it.
Yeah.
And then you have to use it because not only covers the Sunni part of the religion, also there is a covenant from Ali, which covers the Shia one. So now imagine that Armenians contacted Prophet Muhammad and the following Rashidun Caliphs that came after him, like Abu Bakr, Omar, and the covenants are back in their picture. You can see them going out. But Armenians haven't used it that. It's probably because these are located in Jerusalem, and because most of the diaspora Armenians come from Arabic-speaking countries, and because there's animosity between Israel and Arabs, so there hasn't been much studies or people going there. But the Haitad or whoever is following this, I would, enlarge this and put it in and go to Saudi Arabia, to Jordan, to Emirates, to Azerbaijan, to anybody, and to Turkey. I mean, President Erdogan seems to be a pious Muslim, and if his prophet messenger said this before even Turks became Muslims, about 600 years before, roughly. So it was in 625, and the Turks came in Manasgir, that's 1064. So roughly, 500, 600 years ago, we had contacts not with him, also with Omar, that he was a judge, and he was present when the first letter was written or the covenant was written. And then 2 years later, he reconfirmed that decree, and he was a judge, and the pious judge. That's why they call him Al-Faruq. That's why I showed that special part. So political organizations, instead of asking the same question for the last 100 years, they should have different angles that should push them in the right directions, maybe.
This is a legal question, but since you mentioned that the Mount Sinai decree from Muhammad to the clergy there
Right.
was taken by the Turkish Sultan who took up a
Yes.
museum.
Yes.
The Mount Sinai monastery has a legal right to sue Turkey
Yes.
at least in European court,
Right.
to get that belonging back, especially since Turkish government for the past 10, 20 years have been going around in Europe and United States.
Right. Asking their.
From museum asking stuff that didn't even belong to them. It came from when it was Byzantine Empire, but it was located in what is today Turkey. So they're asking back, and a lot of them they got back.
Right.
So this is something that's very valuable story. There's no question, since the text itself is evidence
Right.
of who it belongs to.
Right.
Have you come across any writing in your research of anybody seeking legal redress?
No, I have not, for the monks of Sinai, I have not heard that, but it gets it even better. Not only Prophet Muhammad has, signed and confirmed it, but next to it, Sultan Salim has put his golden, hand to show, to confirm, and he has said about it, which gives it much more value, and there you go. And see, it's next to each other. This is original Prophet Muhammad's hand, and he added this, you can tell it's added later on. And he gave a copy to the monks of Sinai, so they continued. And this actual covenant is the one which kept the Sinai, St. Catherine Monastery intact. It's surrounded by tribal areas and all kinds of Islamic invasions and all that. But that covenant, same thing with the Patriarchate of Jerusalem when Saladin came in, and then he wiped out all the Franks, all the Latin churches. But he gave special treatment to the Armenians, as I mentioned. And he is the one with that firman. He confirms that the lands belong to the Armenians. That's why they inherited them to this date. Also, he tells them the Armenians, the Ethiopic church, the Coptic church, the Assyrians, and the Ethiopian Coptic, and the Assyrians are under, no, not the Greek, are under the Armenians. That's why our relation, the church relation between us is close enough, because it is inscribed, who to take care of them. Yes?
Missak, you mentioned that these churches are the Greek Orthodox Church. Isn't the head of the Greek Church of Islam?
Yes. Yes. He cannot open his own seminary to prepare new priests. And here he is, the Sultan and in Topkapi have the document from Prophet Muhammad telling them what to do and not to do. And there is some kind of a story as well, that when Prophet Muhammad, before becoming a prophet, he was a camel driver who commuted north and south between Mecca, Medina, and all that. He stayed one day at the monastery, and one of the monks recognized that he's going to be a prophet, and he told him something. That's why he had some kind of a close relationship. But these are, stories, or there are no facts or things. But these are things that have lasted since then. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.